I would like to present you Jessica Hausner. Jessica Hausner is she's one of the most important directors now of these young directors. She started with this film, Lovely Rita, and last year she was here and she won the Grand Prix, the prize of our festival, L'Amour Fou. She's already recognized all over the world, and I'd like to just, if you can say some words about how you came to the cinema, how this film, your first film, happens, and everything you want to say.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you that you came to watch Lovely Rita. It's around 15 years ago that I made that film. Yes, it was my first feature film. I founded a production company in 1999. It was also our first production in our company. And I had the plan, as it was a first film, I thought I will not rely on well-known actors, but on the contrary, I chose to work with all non-professional actors. That was, for me, a very challenging thing to do, but it was a first step that I still follow. I do work with actors now, but I still have in all my films a sort of documentary-like tone in it. It's very artificial on the one side, but on the other side there is always a documentary-style element. And those two elements contradict each other, which I think is giving some suspense. I hope you think that too. Stay until the end, it's getting brutal.
And this was your first film. How you get to the production and directing? You make a school, you made short films. How the cinema came to your life?
I started making short films. I had a little video camera, and with my friends we were, I had written some short stories and I made them act in my films, and we spent very much time doing that, and after a while I thought that's what I want to do. I preferred filming to writing because I understood that I love images, and that images can, they express something without words, and words somehow are confusing for me. I think they create a lot of misunderstandings, whereas images, if they're not immediately interpreted, then they have an openness to some different interpretations, which I adore. And so I chose to be a filmmaker, and I went to the film school in Vienna, and I studied there a couple of years. And then I started to produce my own films, because at that times in Vienna it was not very easy to find a producer that would really go so far. I mean, Austria was not a film country at that time. I mean, Haneke was not famous, Seidel was not famous. There was nothing actually, and we thought that we should produce our films ourselves if we want them to be international, to be really, to have that standard, that they can be seen in festivals, in cinemas all over the world, and not only in Austria. That was some step that we wanted to make.
And now you feel that you can have a freedom to do what you want, that you have the possibility of doing after the success of your last movie, or you still have some problems to produce? Do you have a project now? Do you have anything?
I have a project. It's both. In some senses it's getting easier because some people know my work. On the other side, it's also getting more difficult because I'm more critical to myself. I know what can go wrong and what people will not like. So it takes me a long time to really find the story that I'm so sure of that I follow it, because it takes me 4 years to make a film, to write the script, to do the preparations, to edit it, until I'm really to the point where I think, okay, now it's okay. And that gets more difficult.
And did you see lately Lovely Rita, or is
I
something
did see it some time ago, and I was astonished because I thought it's nearly experimental film. I mean, it's the editing is so associative, and the storytelling it's elliptic. That's why I said please stay until the end because suddenly things change. No, I was interested in seeing it again. That's what I started with. Okay.
Okay, so let's see Lovely Rita. Do you want to add something else?
Enjoy. Bon appetit.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. I thought maybe if you're interested, I can just tell you a little bit about the development of the film. And if you have some questions, just ask me. If not, we can just spend some minutes. Maybe something interesting to say is that I was looking for a story of a young girl that commits a murder. That was actually the log line that I started from. Maybe if you want sort of the opposite of this very archetype idea of the young man freeing himself from his parents by killing them, I tried to find the female version of it. So I did some research about young women committing murders, and it was very interesting at that time. I was reading a lot of cases in the court where they collect all the stories about the murders that have been committed, and there was one case about a young girl, age 16, and it was during the 1990s, and she killed both of her parents, and some of the details of this film comes from that case that I was reading. For example, the shooting cellar of the father, and some of the love stories, and the fact that the parents used to lock her up in her room if she had done something bad. But what really interested me was that there was no real explanation for it. It was not one of those cases where you say, finally she frees herself. That's not really what I wanted or what the film is about. And I still, when I see the film, wonder how an audience takes it, because of course that's a strange thing to tell a story that should not explain the reasons and motives, or but that was what interested me. She came from a background of a middle-class family. She went to a Catholic only girls' school. Here comes my own biography. I also went to an only girls Catholic school in Vienna. It's the same school that you see in the film. I also was wearing this uniform and come from a middle-class family. And so I felt suddenly that all the anger or sadness or not being able to talk about something that I felt as a teenager, somehow I rediscovered it in that other story. I did not shoot my parents, but at some point I was happy to get rid of them, so to move on, to move away. And in the following time, when I continued filmmaking, it happens to me again that I'm looking for stories that they talk more about that what you cannot understand within a human being than that what you can understand and explain. It's a paradox, and somehow I believe that this is the point of view that I personally take in my filmmaking. It's a lot about riddles or unsolved problems, events that leave you alone with what shall I make of it, and it's somehow this is my experience, that it's, of course, everyone wishes very much to find logical explanations to behavior or to everything that happened. But I very often have the impression that it's more in our heads, this wish that something should make sense or it should be understandable. But I'm in my films looking for those events or situations or characters that are not explicable, that put you in that situation where you find yourself lost and none of the logic or you suddenly feel in a chaos left behind. Would you like to ask something, or yes, or would you like?
The very end of the movie is a bit like a riddle. There is a light which is turned on, and she looks backwards.
Yes.
Toward. Does it symbolize anything, or?
Well, I mean, the light is obviously that clock that the father had installed, and somehow it's remembering him. It does stand for the father, and when she turns back, she looks at them, maybe. I mean, but they are dead, so she looks at the audience. I mean, she gives the look back to us, which is for me that question mark in the end. It's not, she didn't free herself, and she did something that will of course always stay with her. She came like from the one prison, she went to the next one. She will not be freed. What did you want to ask?
I didn't understand if she killed her father by accident or on purpose. I thought it's by accident, no? She didn't know that it was loaded, no?
Yeah, it's both.
Both.
That's the strange thing about it. It's a mixture of accident and purpose. It's not pure accident because she took the weapon and she tried to do it, but then there was no bullet in the first trial.
Russian roulette.
But then she couldn't stop, of course. He saw her doing it. She would never get out of that situation, so she had to shoot again.
Anyway, I like very much this film. I think it's very sad, but it is sad, the whole story. And so, but I think the circumstances made her kill her parents.
Yes. Yes and no.
All the surroundings.
The surroundings, but it was also the fact that at that moment the weapon was lying exactly in front of her. And not, she didn't really plan it all, no.
It was very, very sad, but I liked it very much anyway.
Thank you.
Because I think it's very, very well done.
Thanks.
The whole atmosphere, terrible atmosphere.
Yeah, they don't really communicate, they don't really talk about what is really going on.
Terrible parents and schoolmates.
Maybe at that time, it was I think the very beginning of your career, right? You also were under the influence, quite strong influence of Heineke, no? You feel also the atmosphere, the story, this great inner suppressed violence. And even what I noticed, because Heineke in many of his, some of his movies, the news bulletin, he uses this news that we keep listening to on the radio, on TV, and even his last movie, Amor, he's using it, and some other movies, I think I've seen it, where, and somehow in this movie, you also, there is somehow this news, which is kind of a center of a certain attention.
Yes.
Can it be, or I mean, or it's by chance, or
subconscious? No, probably you're right. I mean, it's nothing that I can really consciously refer to, but it's true that at that time Michael Haneke, he had already made his films. Yeah, he had already made The Seventh Continent, Benny's Video, and 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Accident or something like that. Yes, sure. And in Austria, for sure, he was, for me at least, a very unique filmmaker. There was no one else like him. Maybe we talked before about Ulrich Seidel, and yes, probably there's an influence. The usage of sound, of course, is. I mean, that's a very conscious choice. That I was never really very much attracted by films that use a score, that use music as accompanying the story or the emotions of the characters. I preferred films with Haneke, but also with other directors, where the sound is playing a much more selbstständig, a role that is more extends for its own. If there is music, then there is music in the scene, and the scene is about that. Like, for example, in the dancing scenes, or you have the sounds from the everyday life. And I mean, I also noticed it now that it's very chosen. Every single bit that you hear, it somehow relates to what is going on. I was also, when I saw it now, I also thought, oh. So I did it like that. It's, yeah, sure, maybe that was something that was in the air at that time also, to do it like that. And also the idea that that you do not present a character that is understandable, fully understandable. On the contrary, you say, look at it, but I won't give you the key to it.
And the idea of the toilet, because it becomes a very strong point of conflict.
Yes.
Family conflict. It was just
that was from the real case that I was reading. Yes. I was
wondering.
Yeah.
It's your idea, or you actually took it from the real case?
That was from the real case. I was really frightened when I was reading that they had again and again the discussion about the toilet lid. I mean, that's really bad enough. I mean, and also in the following films that I made, I always tried to find bits in the reality. I always do a lot of research, even if in the end I construct my own stories, as it's really fiction, but I use some other stories that I researched or people that I interviewed. I try to collect very many details, because I have the impression that that reality has a lot of strange details to offer. I couldn't imagine it all. That's always a strong well of inspiration to do a lot of research.
I have a question. This film, although it's very yellow, it's very cold. And I was thinking, well, there is no music, the girl doesn't talk, she doesn't smile. But then I noticed something that made me like, what's that? I noticed that you reveal the device when you use the zoom in and the zoom out. I wanted to ask, why did you choose to use that? Because it felt to me like you were saying, look, I'm here, I'm telling you the story. Don't be afraid, I'm here with you. I felt like, some warmth,
No, I think you got it absolutely right. It's a way to say, yes, I'm here. It's, of course, it was my first film, and so I was, I still am, but maybe I showed it very much in that film, that a film is a film. I'm aware of the fact that I'm a filmmaker, that I just show you something that is made up. It's not the reality, it's the reality of the film. And the means of filmmaking are somehow a little bit reflected by doing it obvious, by using means of filmmaking that they're not smooth, but they are a little bit rough. So suddenly as a spectator, you feel that somehow it's not just serving the story, but the aesthetics of the film and the cinematography stands a little bit for its own, like a bit what we said about the music. It's also a player. The aesthetics is one character of the film, like are the actors or the furniture or the music. I sometimes try to have that strange ambiguity between feeling safe in a story that leads somewhere, and on the other hand, you're a bit left alone with it. There is not the very nice, everything is going to be all right in the end or during the film. You're also left alone. My other films, for example, the second film was a mystery film, sort of horror film without the monster. That was interesting for me because the audience was very angry at some point, because there is a lot of tension in the film, but it's not at all solved in the end. You have to leave without knowing who is the monster or what is the monster or whatever. And then, so my work continued a little bit in that way. Then the third film I made was a film about this place of miracles in France, Lourdes. And there it's also a little bit, it's about the question why someone is healed who is not even a believer and the others will die, although they were praying all the time. And then I made a film about a double suicide, but it's more a film about trying to find someone who has the same aim as yourself. And if the aim is to die together, then it's even harder to find the right person. So it has a very pragmatical approach on a romantic tragedy theme. That's called Amour Fou. It was, that's what Paulo Branco said. That was the film that was here in the festival last year. And won the first prize, yes. You saw it. Good. Okay, so if you have no more questions, thank you that you have been here. Goodbye.